This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so I think in last session we discussed about the different types of statements, right? How we can deal with the assignment operator, arithmetic operators. Again, there are different types: unary operator, binary operator, ternary operator. So based on some condition, system will decide which part of the expression it should execute. And also we discussed about the arithmetic assignment, the combination of arithmetic operator plus assignment operator. We should also know about this, okay? And the relational operators and the logical operators will result in either true or false. If you want to do the comparison, we use double equal to. Single equal to means assigning the value. Logical operator, if you have many conditions, if you want to combine those many conditions, we use logical operators. So already we discussed those things, and also we discussed about the conditional statements, how we deal with the simple if condition, if else, all those conditions, and also loops, while loop, do while loop. The difference is do while loop, irrespective of the condition satisfied or not satisfied, all the statements will be executed for one time. That is the purpose of the do while loop. For loop, we have different flavors. One of the flavor is based on the index, and the other type of for loop, we say for each loop. When you have the collection, when you have the multiple values, to iterate over each and every value, we use for each loop. Okay, so input output, about that we'll discuss going forward when we start developing the web pages. Okay, so we know the different types of statements now. So based on that, let me show you a few programs. Okay, so I'm opening one of my website. Click on Apex programs. If you see, these are few programs. Okay, I'm just opening one of the program. This is one of the program. So maybe no need to bother about this. Okay, these things we are going to understand as part of the OOPS concepts, object-oriented programming concepts. So focus on these things and try to understand. So what is the purpose of writing this statement? They are defining a memory location, right? They define one of the variable, and as a default value, they are storing a string. This is also one more data type. So multiple variables defined, and there are some default values. So these are memory statements, right? This one, looping, right? Looping statement. So they are using the index-based for loop, iterating over each and every number, right? So here they're adding and assigning. This is assignment. This is assignment. This is arithmetic assignment, right? The meaning of this one is Fibonacci series is equal to Fibonacci series plus, comma, and they're appending something else. Okay, if you see, we know all these types of statements. Already we discussed. Okay? So in the same way, I'm opening one more. This is one more program. Here again, this is a memory statement defining the Boolean variable. Here conditional statement, if, right? So maybe math.mod, all those things, how it works, going forward, you will know. Okay. So this is one condition, relational operator, right? And they are combining both using logical operator, or, right? So we are able to understand what is happening, right? Again, here they are doing some calculations and printing in the log. System.debug means printing as a developer to understand. So what is the value at runtime? So those things to capture in the log. So if you see programs, we can understand what is the purpose of some of the statements. Now, how this program, how it is starting class, and again, what is this? To know that, we need to know about these OOPS concepts. Okay, so there are 4 OOPS concepts. Okay, encapsulation, abstraction, polymorphism, and inheritance. So these are the different OOPS concepts. So once we know the basics, easily we can write the programs and we can do all the things. Okay. So before we deal with that, so just what is the purpose of writing any program? Just for now, assume that this is a program. In the program at high level, so what are the different types of elements we see? Okay. In a program, we see the variables. We define the variables to hold the data, input data, output data, to hold data, whatever we deal while running the program, we define the variables, right? So variables to hold the data. And also with that data, what should happen? Let's say you are supplying 2 numbers. So what you want to do? Maybe do you want to do addition or subtraction or multiplication or something else? So that logic, right? We keep actions, right? Actions means some logic like addition or subtraction. So calculating tax are different things. So this technically these actions in OOPS based programming languages we call as methods. Method means one of the action. So we write some set of statements inside a method and reuse that method again and again. Right? Let's say I have 2 numbers. I'm calling one of the method add. I have 2 more different numbers. Again, I can call the same method with the other 2 numbers. So again and again, we can call the logic of the methods. Method is nothing but the set of statements which can be reused. We call these actions as methods also. So all these are the different elements, right? Variables and actions and many more we'll understand. So all these things we call as the elements in a program. Just to know in a program what we see. Okay, now based on that, so what is encapsulation? Okay, so to understand maybe the definition, what is the purpose of that? So encapsulation, it binds the elements in a program together. It will be used. It binds means keep the elements in a program together in one place. Binds the elements in a program together. Okay, for example, these variables are there, these actions are there, all those things as a single unit, it will keep in one program. Okay, you can say a single unit, something like this. Okay, so but how it can keep bind all these elements in one of the unit? So the program, whatever we write, so we have to start with this encapsulation. As part of the encapsulation, we have few keywords. Okay, we have class and we have interface. Okay, when you write any program, when you write any Apex program, the program should start with either class or interface. By keeping the elements of a program in the class or interface, it will form one of the single unit of program. Okay, so on day to day, if you want to understand, right? Let's say so we know about TV, right? On day to day, we know about TV. TV as a single unit, we'll see. right? But inside TV, there are many elements, right? So we don't bother about looking into all the elements inside the TV. So TV, all the elements will be combined into one of the panel, right? Keep everything in one panel, and we see one unit. TV has a one unit, and we use that. Class is also same thing. So using encapsulation, it will combine everything as one unit. But internally inside that, there will be different types of elements, variables, methods, going forward, constructors, and many more. Okay. So that's the thing. Okay. Now maybe first we need to know about the class. What is class? So class is just to understand. Okay. Class is like a plan, right? If you want to do something, first we plan, and after that we execute the plan. In the same way, when you write a program, it's not that when you are writing, everything will be allocated. So when I say integer is, and if I define that variable, system won't allocate memory, right? That is a plan. If age is applied, okay, it should allocate this much memory. So like that, we plan inside the class. When you are developing the class, whatever the variables we include, those won't be executed, right? Those are like just we are planning. If the age value is supplied, where it has to store, right? If first name supplied, where it has to store. All those things we write the plan, and later when you execute the plan, that time in the reality you will see everything is allocated. So it's like on day-to-day to understand. So let's say the building plan on the paper. Let's say there is a need to construct a building. The plan of the building on the paper is like a class. Class also we are developing for planning. If they supply some data, how it needs to take, and what kind of logic it needs to apply, and what is the result it is going to return. All those things we'll plan in the class. Okay. So the building plan on the paper is nothing until the building is constructed, right? The physical existence of a building is here, like we create the object for the class. Once we create the class, nothing will happen. To run the class, we have to create the object. When you create the object, what will happen? Whatever the variables we define, for everything, system allocate the memory. All the memory will be there. All the memory locations, everything system will activate, and everything is ready to take the input, whatever the data you supply, and all those things. So once we have the object, like it is like a physical existence of a building, we need to operate, right? So building, if the building is there, someone should go and operate, right? If you want to start the lift, you have to instruct. So if you want to open the door, you have to do that action. In the same way, we create the object for the class. By using that object, we call different actions, right? Let's say you want to do addition or subtraction or whatever the other actions we develop, all those things you can do. Okay. So it's like that. Just understand. So class is just when you write if you want to do something, when you plan, we write on paper and see. So how we need to do. It is also like that. In reality, when exactly it gives and works, when you create the object, that time using the object you need to call. So maybe once we create, you will understand. Okay. So just understand it is a plan. Okay. When you create the object, that time only for all the variables and for everything, system allocate the memory, and by using the object, we can call the different actions. Once I create the program, you will understand. Okay, let me write a program. So before we write a program, I also want to explain about the abstraction. Abstraction means it deals with the visibility of the elements in a program. Right? It deals with the visibility of the elements in a program. Right? Element means it can be a variable or method or constructor, all those things. So how it controls visibility? Okay, for example, we have TV. In TV, outside TV, first of all, we have to see the picture that is available. Inside there are many chips and many things will be there. For us, really no need to see that, right? Those will be wrapped inside that and we don't see at all. Few things, when you go back to TV, that time, back of the TV, you can see, maybe keeping the HDMI port and all those things, right? So which one to show, which one to not show, those kind of things we deal by using the abstraction. Okay, so there are different abstraction levels. We call those as access modifiers. Okay, we have access modifiers. These will decide whether which kind of visibility we have to assign to a particular element in a program. Okay, so one of the first type, private. Private is one of the access modifier. Protected is one of the access modifier. Public and global. These are the access modifiers. So when you define a variable or the method, right, when you define one of the element as private, the meaning is that can be accessible only within the same program. Right? Let's say I created 5 Apex classes. Right? If I have a private variable in one of the Apex class, that cannot be called from other Apex classes. That can be called only within the same class. Right? Visibility within the same class, that we call as private. Okay, protected. Protected means visibility within the same class and also the related classes. Okay, visibility within the same class and the related classes, that is protected. Right, the variable or the method, whatever we define, that can be called within the same class, or related class means as part of the inheritance we establish parent-child relationship. So that means child class can see the variable or method or whatever we define with the protected. That's the meaning of that. Public means within the Salesforce organization, within our Salesforce organization. Right? Obviously, when you work, we work for one of the specific client. So here we are thinking, let's say we are working for a client called Dell. Right? So within that Dell Salesforce organization, from any class to any class, if you want to show, we use public. Visibility within the same organization between any class to any class. Right? So that is public. Global means sometimes we integrate with other platforms. From Salesforce, we need to integrate with one of the Java application. Java platform, from there, they want to access our logic. Right? In order to show our logic to other platform application as part of the integration, it should have the global visibility. Global means not only within the Salesforce organization, even outside the organization also. Right? So visibility everywhere. Visibility even outside the Salesforce organization. Okay, that is global. So maybe if you want to understand with the day-to-day example, let's say there is a gated community. Okay, so private means So each family will be having a flat, right? In that gated community, let's say there is a apartment flat for one of the family. So within that flat, so the bedrooms and all those things, those are like private place, right? So no one can enter except that family member, right? So that is private. Protected means, let's say some relatives, some friends, if they come to the home, they can stay in hall and some areas, right? So that is like protected. So friends and relatives can come and they can sit in hall and some places. So it's like a protected. Public means there are some common places in the gated community, like the gym and maybe walking area and different places. It's like a public. Anyone in the gated community, they can use that facility. So global means, let's say there is a shopping mall and it is allowed to visit that shopping mall by outside people of the community also. Not only that gated community, outside the people also can come and access that shopping mall. So that is like a global visibility. It's like that. Just to try to remember, if you think like that, it might be easy. Okay, so it's like that. So now, based on this, we are going to create one of the class, and in that, obviously, we have to decide what kind of access you are providing, and slowly we understand how exactly it will work. Okay, so let's go to Salesforce. So once we log into the Salesforce, there are different places how we can create the class. One place, once you click on setup left side, search for FX classes. From here you can create the FX class. This is one place. Okay, so one more place, when you click on this gear icon, you can open developer console. Developer console is IDE. IDE means integrated development environment. That means as a developer, whatever we need, all those options you can see here. It is like a web-based IDE from Salesforce. So here you see more extra options. As a developer, whatever we need, everything you'll see here. Okay, so this is one place to create the class, right? So this is one place. When compared to that, this is very better, because not only class, many other things as a developer, whatever we need, we can see here. This is one thing. And also, if needed, you can also use some of the third-party tool. If you see this tool, whatever I am opening, this one VS Code, Visual Studio Code, which is from Microsoft and which is open source. That means anyone can install and use. Okay, this is not Visual Studio. Visual Studio is different. Visual Studio is for the .NET development and it is licensed. Whatever I am using is Visual Studio Code, right? That is important. Okay, Visual Studio Code, which is open source, anyone can install and work. So using this also, we can connect it to our Salesforce organization and work. So first, I'll explain here for a few examples to know how we deal with this, and also few examples I'll explain here. And slowly, we also deal with the VS Code, and most of the syllabus we cover by developing in the VS Code. So the advantage is you can have backup in our local system, right? So, and also it is more comfortable when compared to browser. So all those things will be there. Okay. So first, let's create here. Setup left side, search for Apex classes and click on new. We are creating our first class, right? First Apex class. Like this. Okay, maybe I am increasing font and write the code. Okay, so the thing is, if you want to write any Apex class or Apex program, the program should start with class or interface. Okay. So let's say here I'm starting this program with the class, right? The logic, if you want to execute many statements inside this, so how we do, we give the block. This is one block, right? So inside that we are going to write the logic. Okay, but when you define class, we also need to give the name for the class, because we are going to create multiple classes for different business scenarios. So to recognize each and every class, we have to give some unique name for the class. Okay, so let's say we are going to create a very simple program called a rectangle. Okay, and this program, what it needs to do, based on the length and breadth, we need to calculate area and perimeter of a rectangle. That is the requirement. Now I'm giving the name of the class as class and space, name of the class rectangle. That is the name of the class. Again, as a indentation means the program standard. The program standard is start the class name with a capital letter. Each and every word should be a capital letter, right? So meaning is my first class. Let's say this is the name, right? Each and every word I'm starting with the capital letter. That is a standard. If you don't follow, nothing will happen. If you follow, it is better. Okay, it's like that. And save it. Okay, so when you save, what will happen? System will verify for the syntax, whether this syntax is it correct or not. So internally on the Salesforce server, they have a software installed, force.com. They have the all softwares installed to compile this. It will be run on that and it gives the result. Okay, so I'm saving. As soon as we save, system will check for the syntax. We also technically say compile. System will compile for the syntax. If there is error, it will throw like this. So that means this is not saved until we write without, with the proper syntax. This program cannot be saved. Okay. Next time, if you come back here, it won't be there. Okay. So we have to make sure to follow the syntax and define. Now here we are seeing one error. Top level type must have public or global visibility. Right? So it is talking about these things, right? Access modifiers. So you can apply the access modifier for a class, for a variable, for a method, for all those things. Okay. So if you don't define anything, right? So what is the default access modifier? Private, right? I'm not saying whether this class is public or global or private. If you don't define any access modifier, the default access modifier is private. So by default, this class system is treating as private. But when you click on new and when you are creating the class, the top level class, we click on new and creating the class. The top level class should not have the private or protected. It should be public and global visibility. Otherwise, we cannot create the class. Okay, that's the thing. So in order to save this, either this class should be public or global. Okay, public class. But when we can define a class as private, we have a concept of inner class. Inside the class, we can also define one more class. That time it is our wish. You want to define as private or protected or whatever you want, you can define. But the top level, when you click on new and creating a class, that should be either public or global visibility. Now, due to this, if I save, it will be saved. But this is one of the first point we are learning. As a developer, if you don't want to forget, right, I'm keeping that in a comment. So here, to write the command, we use // After that, whatever we type, whatever we keep, system won't check for the syntax. right? That is just as a developer to read and understand few things. Okay, so now save. It is saved, right? Saved. That means compilation successful and syntax is valid. That's why it is saved. That's it. We created one of the Apex class. So inside that, nothing is mandatory. It's all based on our requirements, what exactly you want. So let's say for the rectangle, we need length and breadth. To calculate area, we need length value. We also need breadth value. So let's say to hold length value, to hold breadth value, I am defining variables. Right? Length means it's a number. Which type we need to use? We have data types, right? For numbers, mostly we have data types integer and decimal. So which one is better, integer or decimal? We have to decide. Let's say if they have the requirement to give 2.5, something like that, we need to go with the decimal. Right? Let's say I'm giving decimal length. Right? So with the same type, if you are defining in the same line, we will say breadth. So we are defining two variables to hold decimal values. Okay, that's it. Just to save it. These are to allow storing those. And now, one of the next thing, I'm defining one of the method. Method is like an action, a reusable set of statements. We call as a method. So I'm defining one of first method here. So I'm also defining the method as public visibility, and the method should have a return type. That means after calling the method, do you, as a developer, let's say, is there any requirement to get the value, some value in return? Or if you don't want to get any value, just you want to execute the statements inside the method. So based on that, we decide the return type. After executing the method, if there is no need of getting any value in return, okay, so we have to say return type as void. Void means nothing. This method, after executing the statements inside the method, this method is not going to return anything. That's the meaning. Okay, but if you want to return or if you don't want to return, we have to mention the return type. Okay, if you don't want to return anything, keep void. Void means system will understand this method is not returning anything, like that, right? So here, just I'm giving the method name as show result. This is the method name, right? Method will be given with this kind of brackets, right? Function brackets. We say function brackets, and inside that, you see the block of logic we are going to write. This is a block, right? Inside that, we write the logic. And also, if you observe here, each time when I start this, inside that, I'm giving tab space. So press tab every time under each block when you write the statement, give the tab space. So these are the standards. If you don't do that, what will happen? Everything people write like this. Very, very difficult to understand. People know that you don't have experience. Okay, so as a experienced developer, mostly people 99% follow the standards. From day one, if you try to follow without thinking, right? So if you start developing like this, if you practice like this, later if someone suggested you to follow the indentation, every time you need to conscious and think and try to give. From day one, if you try to practice like this without thinking, all those things automatically will give tab space. All those things will come up. Okay, so just to follow those standards. Now inside this, what I want to do, I want to print just as a developer to understand what is the value present in this length and what is the value present in this breadth. I want to print in the log. Already we know that kind of statement, right? To print anything in the log, what we do, system.debug length. That is the way. It will print that length. But while printing, maybe if you see, we defined this variable, but we did not assign anything. If you don't assign anything, by default, it holds null, right? But in the log, while we see for which purpose we are printing, we don't know. Maybe as a developer to understand. So why the null is printing? That null is for what? So I'm taking a string here. Right? So that is nothing but length, right? Colon. As a developer to understand in the log, I want to see like this in the log. It will be printing like length colon space. That is a string. For a string, if you want to concatenate with a variable, right? Dynamic value, use plus and I'm giving. Okay, so in the log it will print like this, length colon. We know that it will be printing null, right? Because we did not assign anything. Okay, in the same way, copy. This is for breadth, right? Breadth like this. So that's it. This is one of the program. Still, it is not completed, right? Just I wrote one of the apex method. Now let's see how we can call it and execute. Later, I will add a few more methods and explain how exactly it will work. Okay. So for now, this code is saved. How we can call and how we can see the result. So there are different ways to call. Okay, we are in very early stage. Okay, going forward, we also develop the UI. From UI, when you click on a button or something, that time we'll call these methods and see the results. But until that time, okay, so what I'll do, one of the way to call this as a developer, right? Maybe it's not end user, as a developer, whatever we developed to test it quickly, one of the way is go to developer console, debug, open execute anonymous window. Like the apex statements, whatever we executed, same place. Okay. So here you can call this. What are the other places to call this program? Slowly, when we reach that topic, you will understand. Okay. For now, don't bother about, don't think that we call like this one. Okay. So since we are in early stage, just I am showing like this. Going forward, when we reach those topics, you will understand how exactly we call. Okay. So here I am writing the logic to call the class. Now this code, whatever we wrote, here it won't allocate any memory. Now this is like a text. This is like something we are writing, what we are planning, right? It's like one of the some plan which we write in a paper, on a paper, right? So now when it becomes reality, when we create the object. When you create the object, whatever the variables we define, for all those things, the system allocate the memory. Okay, by using that object, we can call the variable and method or whatever you want. Okay, so let's create the object. To create the object, what is the syntax? Right? Object creation. This is in comment, right? Class name. To create the object, the syntax, class name, the name of the object. As a developer, like a variable, right? For variable, how we give the name, same way. Give. This is the name of the object is equal to, and also maybe for you to understand in an easy way. If you remember, I explained about the non-primitive data types, right? I also told that we use apex class as a non-primitive type, right? So when we define, right, rectangle is a class, right? So I'm giving this name. But for non-primitive types, we have to allocate the memory by using new operator like this. Here also same thing. We give new and give the like this. That's similar to that I am doing. So this is nothing but we are creating one of the variable, right? Non-primitive type of variable. So here we also say, since it is a class, we also say this as object name. Maybe if you want to call that as a variable name, yeah, you can also call as a variable name or object name. Both are same when you deal with the class. So here, new, by using new operator, after new, whatever we give, that part is for constructor. Okay? Constructor means once the object is created, what are the statements immediately you want to execute? Let's say as soon as the object is created, there is a requirement to execute 10 lines of code. Those kind of things we keep in the constructor. Still we did not define. I'll define and show you later. Okay. So this place is for the constructor. Okay. So if there is no constructor defined, here we did not define any constructor. If you don't define any constructor in a program, system maintain a default constructor. How the default constructor looks, it will be like this. Public constructor name should be same as class name. This we call as default constructor. Even though you don't define, internally with this signature, system maintain a constructor. Okay, we are trying to invoke this one. This place is for that. Okay, so just understand that. Okay, so I'm not defining. Even though you don't define, internally with that signature, whatever I wrote just now, system maintains a constructor. Same thing we are going to invoke. So this is like we created an object. This is the name of the object. With object, we need to call the variables or the methods or whatever you want, we can access with the object name. Now, when this statement is executed, for all these variables, all the memory and everything will be allocated. As soon as I start executing, when this statement is executed, immediately system allocate the memory to hold length value and breadth value. For decimal type, how much memory needed, that much memory will be allocated by the system at the time of running the program. Execute, right? When it started executing, that time system allocate all that information, right? So it's like, right, so let's say there is a game in my system. Until you launch the game and run, so runtime system, it won't occupy any memory in our RAM, right? Yesterday I explained about RAM. Right? Let's say my laptop RAM is 4 GB. Whenever we open any application, when the application is running internally, application is developed with some program. When you open any program, internally, when you open any application, internally it will be running a program. That program needs memory, right? So if I type anything here, how exactly it is holding? Internally, it will maintain memory to hold all this text content, right? So the runtime memory will be allocated, right? When you create the object, click on execute, that is the point of time the memory will be allocated for all these variables. Okay. So when the program is in execution, if you want to call a variable or the method, you can call. Let's say I want to call this show result, right? Dot show result, like this I'm call. Okay. So now, so what will happen when we click on execute? It will create the object and memory will be allocated for all these things. Now, immediately we need to follow this, right? I mean, this one, if you give before to this, it will throw error. We have to follow the flow. the sequence also matters. Okay. So after this line, after the object is created, after that, by using that object name, we are calling this method. So if you call this, what it will do, it will print, it will look into that memory location of length and breadth. So what are the values present in that? It will be printing. Since we did not assign, even though a system allocates the memory, since we did not assign anything, if you don't assign anything, by default it holds null. Right now, if I execute this, what will happen? It execute this, and after that it execute this. Here we are printing in the log. This will be printed in the log, and we will see those things in the log. Right? So when I execute, I want to open the log automatically. Click on execute. It's executed, and the system is generating a log. You see some bytes and all those things system allocates. If you don't want to bother about that, anyway, right? We are keeping debugs. Click on debug only. If you see length is null, breadth is null. Right? We allocated the memory, but we did not assign any value. That's why we are seeing length value as null and the breadth value as null, like that. Okay. And also to show you, so practically, you can also assign the values like this, right? Save. Now go back. Now execute, right? Now I'm giving default values as 0, 0. Now if you execute, what is the result we see? When this is called, what is the value present in length? 0, breadth 0, right? You'll see 0, 0. So execute. So click on debug only. And you are seeing 0, 0, right? So like that we can do. And also the purpose of the constructor, right? We are going with the default constructor. So what will happen? The constructor, whenever we create the object, all the statements inside the constructor will be executed first. Now what I am doing, I am defining that default constructor, whatever is there. If you don't define also, system maintain, but I am defining. Constructor name should be same as class name, right? So we have to follow this signature. Constructor name should be same as class name, and this function bracket we need to keep. So inside this, whatever the logic you want, we can write. So what I am doing here, inside this length, I'm giving as 10, and the breadth I'm giving as 20. So now what will happen? We know that by default the value of the length is 0, breadth is 0. But the first, as soon as this statement completed executing, it execute all these statements in the constructor. Now you will see the value of the length and breadth as 10 and 20, because the constructor will be automatically executed whenever we create the object due to this line. And whatever the default values of the variables are there, those are replaced with this 10 and 20, because we wrote the logic to replace. That's the purpose of the constructor. As soon as you create the object, if you want to execute some set of statements, that time we use the constructor. Constructor cannot be called again and again. Only at the time of creating the object, all the statements in the constructor will be executed. The logic of the method can be called again and again. This one I can call 10 times, 20 times also. But constructor will be executed only one time at the time of creating the object. It's like that. Now what is the result we see? 10 and 20. Because when it executes, even though it is having default values 0, 0, these statements will be executed 10 and 20. Now when you call, let execute, click on debug only, you are seeing 10 and 20, right? So that's the constructor, right? It executes only one time. It executes only one time when the object is created. At this point, we should know. Okay. Now, let's say from here, I want to decide instead of going with the 10, 20, I want to give 100 and 200, whatever I want as a developer while referring. So for that, we can also define one more constructor. With the same name, we can define multiple constructors. So I'm copying this, I'm pasting, but I can, if I say one more constructor, there should be a difference with the number of parameters or the data type of the arguments. Here we supply the parameters. If you give like this, it will throw error, right? Because already we have this rectangle defined. When I say we can define one more constructor, there should be a difference with the number of parameters. Here, whatever we give, we call as parameters. Okay. Let's say this constructor should accept decimal, again length, one of the value, and the decimal breadth. The meaning of this one is to refer this constructor. While referring this constructor, we have to supply the length value of the type decimal and the breadth value of the type decimal. So that's the meaning. These things we call as parameters, right? These things, whatever here I have defined, this is one parameter and this is one parameter of the type decimal. Okay, now if you try to save without any compilation error, you will see it is saved. Because there is a change in the signature. This is not having any parameter, but this is having two parameters. Like that, 3 or 4 or 5 also you can define. But there should be a difference with the number of parameters or the data type of a parameter. Okay, so like that. Now here, whatever they supplied, this is the whatever when you supply, whatever the values we supply. Let's say I want to call this one. Okay, so what we do here, let's say I'm supplying 300 and 400. When I execute, this time how it will understand, here from here whatever we are supplying, these we call as arguments, right? Arguments are the actual values which we supply to the parameter. So 300 is one argument value, 400 is a argument value. This argument value will be assigned to this parameter. This argument value will be supplied to this parameter. That argument, parameter, almost same but slight difference. Here we call as parameter. Here when you supply the actual values, that time we call as argument. Okay, now due to this, when you execute, what will happen? It is going to invoke this one, not this one, right? So this one, because we are supplying those two, system will detect that this is the constructor for that. And now whatever we supplied, that 300 will be in this, right? Then so I'm just printing that and the breadth. But if you see, our class level variable name is also same. This length and that length, the spelling is same, right? So when I say length equal to length, which is from this parameter and which is from this class level variable. Okay, so now what will happen? This is like local, right? This is like more local, specific to this constructor. System give more priority for local variables. Okay, so it will give priority to this. So whatever we are supplying, that is here. Whenever you try to refer, these two lengths are referring from this one. The class variable is not in picture. That's what will happen. So when you have class variable and the local variable, right? For a parameter, whatever the local variable, both are same. System give preference for local. Local will be having more preference. Now, my meaning is this left side, whatever I am giving, should be the class variable, right? How to bring the visibility of the class variable is by using this keyword. Okay, by using this keyword, when you say this, system will understand that it needs to look into the class level variable, right? And it will refer that. So just understand one point: if the class variable name and the local variable name both are same, system give more preference to the local variable. To bring the visibility of the class variable, we use this keyword, right? For this also I'm giving this. That means this will be pointed to this, which is at class level. Here I'm not using this. It take preference from the local variable, right? That's it. So now just save it. Now while calling, we have the flexibility to supply whatever you want. Now we are giving 300 and 400. It will invoke this constructor, and now you will see length and breadth assigned with 300 and 400. Execute. It is executed. You are seeing 300 and 400 like that. Okay, so just understand about that. And this is the procedure. So now, so far, any questions, anyone? So this part, whatever just now we discussed, we call this as overloading, constructor overloading as part of the OOPS concepts. If you scroll down, we have a concept called polymorphism. Right? Polymorphism is different behavior of the elements in a program. We call as polymorphism. So in this, we have overloading, overriding. Just now, whatever we discussed is constructor overloading, right? We are overloading these parameters. This here, this is having nothing, but this constructor is having two parameters. So that part we call as overloading. By overloading a constructor, going forward the method, so we can achieve a different behavior, right? So same thing, same constructor. If you don't supply anything, it behaves differently. If you give, it will behave differently. So that is the constructor overloading. And also, if you see here, plus operator here it will do concatenation. But if you add two numbers, 10 plus 20, if you give, it will add 10 plus 20, 30. In some places, it is doing addition. In some places, it is doing concatenation. So that behavior we call as operator overloading. Same plus operator. In some places, it is adding two numbers and giving result. But in some places, it is concatenating. When you deal with string and the number, will concatenate. So that's the concept of the polymorphism. Slowly, we'll understand a few things. Okay. So now, so far, whatever I explained, any questions on understanding this?
Sir, so the constructor, we use it to pass the values.
So constructor.
I mean, I'm trying to understand the difference between method and constructor. So we use constructor to pass the values when we're calling.
Yeah. So let's say you don't want to pass the value, also fine, right? Default constructor, for this, no need to pass any values, right? So the difference between the constructor and the method is constructor will be executed at the time of creating the object automatically, and that can be executed only one time. once we have the object, if you have this method, right, method can be executed multiple times, right? I want to call this method 3 times, you can call. But constructor, only one time when the object is created, that time it executes. That's the difference between the constructor and the method. Method is like reusable set of statements. Constructor, one time if you want to execute the logic at the time of creating the object, that logic we keep in the constructor. So not only to assign the values, let's say going forward when we write some complex logic, we need to get data from database and do some calculations. All complex logic also you can keep inside the constructor. How you need to understand the logic one time if you want to execute the logic as soon as the object is created, that logic we have to keep inside the constructor. If there is a requirement to reuse the logic again and again multiple times, so that time we need to use the method. Okay, either method or the constructor. Parameters, if you define only, we have to supply, right? If you don't define, no need to supply. If you see this method is not accepting any parameter, but here we are supplying. It's all based on how we define. Okay.
Okay, sir. And parameters when we supply, like here we supplied 300 and 400, and inside the constructor we mentioned this dot class, right? So I mean we refer to the class variable. So there the length is assigned to 0. Does it mean it will override the length to 0, or I mean I know it's taking 300 and 400.
Yeah. So first these variables will be initialized with 0, 0, right? So
Yes,
after
sir.
that, constructor will execute later, right? System initialize all these variables. Later, system will execute the constructor and replace, right? Since here we are again assigning the 0 and the 0 of the breadth will be replaced with whatever we supplied here. Right? That's why you are seeing in the background, if you see, it will
Yes, sir.
replace.
But yeah. But there we change it to this dot this dot length. So what does it mean, sir?
Yeah,
Does it?
this dot length means, that's what I'm saying here. If you give like this, what it will do, this will be pointed to this one. You see here whatever is there, it will be pointed to this. Breadth also, it will be pointed to this. Now, this class variable is not in picture. But what is my goal here? Whatever the 300 we are supplying, whatever 400 we are supplying, I want to assign to this variable which is at class level.
Okay.
Since our local variable name is also same as class name, here both places whatever here I included, it will refer to this local variable only. This is not coming in picture, but my goal is I want to assign value to that. To recognize that class level variable, I don't want this local variable. I want to refer to the class variable. When the local variable and class variable both are same, to make the system understand, I want class level variable, we say this dot. If you say like this, system will understand it needs to look into the variable which is inside the class, not the local, right? So that way, this will be pointed to this. Into that, the 300 whatever we supply will be assigned. In the same way,
Okay.
this one. Here, this
Yeah.
is to recognize the class variable, right?
Yes,
It's not
sir.
that we
Yeah.
are changing that. It's not that we are changing that. This is to recognize that. Okay.
Yeah. Got it, sir. Yeah, thank you. And sir, one last question. Here we are referring it as an object and constructor. So normally tables also we refer it as an object. So when we say like we are creating object, what does it mean, sir, exactly?
Yeah. So that object is for table, and this is. So you have to explain the context. In which point of context you are referring object. You can say Apex object, right?
Okay.
Object in the Apex code. That way, people don't think that it is a database table, right? So
Okay.
anyway, on day-to-day basis, when to refer the database tables, we say standard object or custom object. Mostly we don't say object. Okay, we say standard object or custom object like that. Okay, but
Okay.
here we don't add that, right? Simply we say object. So it's based on the context, what you are talking or someone is talking, in which context they are explaining. Based on that, we have to understand they are referring to the database table or they are referring to the object for a class. Okay.
Okay, sir. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So any other questions, anyone?
Enter Apex code. So rectangle you write RECT. So if REC write, it will take or not?
So here this is the name of a variable, right? Name of the object. It can be anything, right? So you want to give like this, you can give, right?
Yeah.
In the developer hands, right? This name you can decide whatever you want by following the variable naming conventions. Okay.
So we will write REC also.
You can also give like this. That's what I'm saying. It is in your hands, right? When you write your code, you are the developer. However you want, you can give. Okay. But the rule is you have to follow the naming conventions, right? You cannot start like this. By following the rule, as soon as whatever you define it is okay, it will accept.
So whatever given in REC, so below also REC dot show result.
Yeah, when you give like this, you have to always, right? In all places, you need to refer the same thing. It's like that. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Is there any difficulty on understanding? Okay. Yeah. So with today, maybe some of you, if you are joining newly, so with today, we are done with the demo. From Monday, the regular classes will be started. I'll send one email. If you are interested, you can so follow the instructions in that email and proceed further. Okay. We'll continue on Monday. Thank you.